Starting off with my cost of equity calculation, weighted average cost of capital calculation, terminal value calculations, my EBITDA is going to be my EBIT plus my depreciation and amortization because I did my free cash flow to firm from NOPAT, so I don't have an EBITDA margin or EBITDA multiple. Price per share. Sensitivity analysis. Getting straight into my sensitivity analysis from a qualitative discussion standpoint, I have a few observations that I took note of. Implied share price varies greatly based on a plus or minus 1% movement in the weighted average cost of capital used in the perpetuity growth sensitivity analysis. The lower the weighted average cost of capital, the bigger the variation is in implied share price for the given terminal value. And obviously with that being the denominator, if you have a lower weighted average cost of capital and a higher terminal growth rate, then that does create a smaller denominator, which creates a bigger terminal value. The higher the compounded annual growth rate variable is, the lower the implied share price is in the perpetuity growth method. That's due to capital investments outweighing depreciation and amortization as a result, as a percentage of revenue. That can be seen right here, where my projected percentages as well as the historical percentages are a lot higher here than what they are or what they have been for depreciation and amortization. The dynamic of inverse share price relative to compound annual growth rate does not show in the EBITDA multiple method because the method does not take into account capital investments. And so you get an increase as compound annual growth rate grows for the EBITDA exit multiple method. EBITDA multiple method gives a relatively equal variation in regards to both stage 1 and stage 2 growth changes relative to the EBITDA exit multiple. So this yellow line going diagonally from corner to corner shows that the distribution is pretty equal. In a 1-to-1 move, 1% down and 1% over gives about the same change. And that's across the board. And that's also relatively the same here, but not 100%. The main drivers that I take from this are that the invested capital has a really high force on value. If invested capital, return on invested capital is high, then the company has a higher value. They can do that either by increasing revenue on invested capital or decreasing in fixed assets with the same revenue. In comparison to a peer, I am showing that I have a lower price per share than my peer does. We are both looking at a undervalued company, but his shows that it's a lot more undervalued than what mine is. That is going to, in my opinion, be mainly due to his compounded annual growth rate and his terminal growth rate in comparison to mine. Mine is 5.5% for the compounded annual growth rate, which his appears to be higher than that. And my terminal growth rate is 2.5. His is double that of mine. And so that creates a difference. But across the board, a lot of things are the same. We use the same market premium. Our weighted average cost of capital is relatively the same also. To do some of the one-to-one changes, just to kind of see what that looks like here. If I increase my weighted average cost of capital from 6.8 to 7.8, see the changes. I do not have an EBITDA margin, so again, I'm not able to do that. If I increase my steady state growth rate from 2.5 to 3.5, you can see those changes as well. I think my model has a pretty good reflection of reality because I feel pretty good about my assumptions. I use my assumptions based on sources of industry research. The IBIS predicts that even with coronavirus, the hotel industry is going to have an annualized 4.5% revenue increase over the next 5 years. I predict that, with IHG being a major player in the industry, it is going to have a higher um, growth rate than the industry in total. I am also pretty confident in my 2.5% terminal growth rate, which is in line with OECD's projected global real GDP long-term forecast of 2.47. In the hotel industry, it has a pretty strong correlation with gross domestic product. When the economy is doing well, the travel industry and the tourism industry is doing well, and then vice versa. And so I would like to, stay along with the GDP for the terminal growth rate. And so I feel pretty confident with those growth rates. The one thing that I do have a little bit of concern about is I wonder if my fixed assets are a good indication of what's going to happen in the future. I know that this is an asset light industry, and so that could be too high of a percent of revenue, and it could be decreasing at a bigger rate than what I have projected.